That's great. Sounds like a fun experience. I mean, fun but
Yeah.
terrifying, as you say. And how were the New Zealanders, the winery, tying that together? Were they pairing it with seafood, or just here's a great wine to have after you've had a terrifying experience?
So we did lunch. We did a really nice seafood lunch before, which
Okay.
I don't know if that was a good idea,
Oh no?
to have lunch before.
Oh.
But it was fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't remember anybody getting sick, but we had a lovely lunch on the water, and then everyone was like, okay, time to go out to the boats. So we had to take a little boat all the way to the yacht, the super yacht, and yeah, getting on that boat was it was just even getting on the boat and off of the boat was kind of an adventure. I remember like one of the crew members just reaching down and like yanking me up by one arm, and I was like, okay, here we go.
Wow. How big are the
hmm
super yachts, roughly?
Massive.
Oh,
I don't have measurements, but
okay.
massive.
But they're large, but just sleek. Not
They are
aerodynamic,
large.
but water
Yeah.
dynamic or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
large and in charge.
Great. So you had another experience on the Dalmatian coast, I think a calmer water experience.
hmm This was one of the best trips I've ever had in my life.
Oh.
It was also a work trip. I'm very, very, very fortunate to be able to do things like this for my
Mm.
job. Obviously, the past year, not so much, but like over my years as a journalist, I want to say it's been almost a decade now.
Okay.
Um, I have had the good fortune to go all over the world and experience some incredible things that I would never have otherwise.
Wow.
And so this was one of those things. It was more of a travel story, but it was wine themed. So it was me and I think two other journalists and the publicist, and then our captain,
Hmm.
who was, he was a young guy. He was around our age, and we just had so much fun. And so we essentially just spent a week. It was so chill. Like press trips can sometimes be very jam-packed
Oh, yes.
with
Yeah.
scheduling, and so
Hmm.
that makes it kind of difficult to get your work done. And on these trips we are working. Like I will work on the plane. I will, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning with severe jet lag and be like, okay, I need to file this story, or I need to knock out 30 emails right now. Wherever I can find Wi-Fi and like at least a 10-minute chunk of time I'm working. So this trip was awesome in the sense that the only things that we had on the schedule were like tastings in the evening because during the day we were sailing.
Okay.
So I would get up early, I would have some coffee on the deck, and there was Wi-Fi on the boat, which was like a godsend. And so I would work for a couple of hours, and it was so peaceful. I was the only one awake except the captain. And, so it was just me and him. And I was like typing away. And then by noon, I was out in the sun on the other side of the boat, just like living my best life.
Oh, that sounds glorious. And
It was awesome.
what kind of wines were you tasting? Was it I mean, Croatia is kind of what's old is new again, coming back. It's got a long tradition of winemaking, but what kind of wines were you tasting there?
I remember tasting lots of indigenous varietals.
Hmm.
The one that sticks out in my mind is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Plavat's Mali.
Okay. Hmm.
Um, and the wines were really good, and we probably had a bit too much of that, a bit too much of it, but we would also just like pick up a couple of bottles, which were really affordable, and have them on the boat. And inevitably, after a long day of, well, a short day of working and a long day of just lounging in the sun and talking and taking pictures and swimming, etc., we would get into the wines.
Oh, lovely. And do you remember any particular Croatian dishes that were paired with the wines?
Oh man. Um,
Probably a lot of
I
seafood.
really don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of seafood.
Yeah.
This was a couple years ago, so, and my memory was not I, you know, my memory is not great from
Well,
that time, but
wine kind of erases a lot of things over time too.
yeah, well, there's that. And also like I think, we've all had to slow down over the course of the pandemic, and
Mm.
so in retrospect, I'm like, I was so frazzled for years that
Wow.
I could barely keep anything straight. It was like go, go, go. I remember one time I was in the Catskills and I had to go directly I was in the Catskills for a photo shoot and I had to go directly from the Catskills to JFK to fly to Morocco for like 2 nights
Wow.
for another story. And then from Morocco, I think I flew somewhere else in a completely different time zone and then I finally went home. So it was things like that. Like
Hmm.
I remember also I was in Australia, I was in New South Wales for a conference, a wine conference. And obviously that's a very long flight and it took me a while to get adjusted. I like to think I've got, beating the jet lag on like down to a science, but that one was kind of hard for me to adjust.
Hmm.
And then I remember once that trip was over, I flew directly to Park City, Utah for a whiskey event.
Wow. Wow. And
Yeah.
so, okay, so you're frazzled. But did you have any coping strategies? Like, how did you stay well enough to keep working at, especially with that pace and the travel?
That's a great question. I really was not okay during that time. And not to overshare, but like because we've been stuck at home, like really being forced to be introspective and
Mm-hmm.
reflect on things, and we have time to do things that we maybe didn't have time to do before. I finally was able to start going to therapy.
Yes.
I couldn't, and especially because everything became available virtually.
Right.
And I'm completely open about this, and
Mm-hmm.
feel free to cut me off if it's just like
No, no.
you don't
I,
want to
I
talk about
do therapy as
it.
well online. Thank God it's
Yeah.
available. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so and especially with my dad passing away at the beginning
Mm,
of, he passed away last April. So that was right in the beginning of everything with coronavirus.
right.
I was just a mess.
That's hard.
And
Yeah.
it was also a bit of a shock going from traveling 40 to 45 weeks out of the year
Mm,
for several years straight.
wow.
Um, and finally just being forced to stop and take a step back and like be in one place. My mom finally just pushed. I had known that I needed to maybe like talk to someone for years, but my mom
Mm,
was like, you need to talk to someone right now because I'm worried about you. And so yeah, so now I'm on antidepressants and I feel way better.
great.
And I work better. I remember things better. I feel more motivated to just be more productive as a human being. Like,
That's awesome.
even before all this, because I was also so physically tired all the time,
Yeah, you
and
must have been. Just
I
it's a
wasn't,
tax on the body, the travel, the alcohol, everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so, and I've never been one to drink myself into oblivion, which is good.
Hmm.
So I've always been kind of mindful of my consumption, but even still, it was so hard to just function. It was so hard to get up in the morning. Like I would wake up in the mornings so physically exhausted that it hurt to breathe.
Hmm.
And like,
Wow.
on trips like the Australia Park City one, I remember just being like, I am so tired. My face hurts. Like I can't, and I feel like I'm not in my body.
Right.
So that made for some awkward moments because I'm like, I don't actually know what I'm saying right now. So it was really
Yeah.
difficult. And it
Yeah.
wasn't at all because of the wine. It was because I
Sure.
was not taking care of myself.
Yes.
So, I think everyone should be in therapy. I think, if, because at a certain point you start to feel like, oh, this is just the way that this is just who I am. This is how I feel
Mm,
every day. You don't necessarily pick up on the fact that it's not necessarily normal, like
right. Yeah.
by definition. You know,
Oh, I hear you.
so
I hear you.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think it's endemic to the wine and spirits industry. I mean, you've
mhm.
talked about that in other places or written about it. I think people don't take care of themselves. I think we're in this sort of
Mhm.
fun hospitality and everything's a party until it isn't.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think it gets talked enough. Yeah,
Right.
you know.
And mental health has been a big conversation lately, especially again since um, we've all been stuck at home. And
Hmm.
so I'm glad. I also think so. I'm part of the millennial generation, and I think that we are very, very open about mental health. And
Yes.
so I think maybe other generations think we're just like a bad batch maybe. And not that having mental health issues is bad, it's a
Mm.
reality.
Yeah.
But because we're so open about it and so like haha, like go to therapy. Um and so like it's not a thing that we're ashamed about. I mean, generally speaking, like we're trying
Mhm.
to take the stigma away from getting the help that you need,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So that there is a lot of conversation around that.
And you've written too about Kathy Heggie. Am I pronouncing her name correctly? And Rebecca Hopkins. They've started sort of a wellness group in the
Hmm.
wine world that is trying to incorporate more balance and talk about those issues. What did you discover in talking to them and writing about them?
They're doing great things for the industry. I think they're, because they're pretty much exclusively focused on wellness
Hmm.
for people in the hospitality industry, particularly wine people. I think it's really good that there's a defined community that people can be as involved in or as, you know, just stay in the periphery if they want to. There's a weekly newsletter, and I know they used to do a lot of events, and they have a lot of discussions. And I think it's just a really healthy environment for people to sort of dip their toes in or dive in fully if they need a place to sort of explore or talk about mental health
Yeah,
and
yeah.
physical health and how those two kind of intertwine.
That's true. I think it's called a balanced glass, I believe.
Hmm.
Balancedglass.com if folks are looking for that because I think some of their tips too are great for those outside the wine industry who just,
Hmm.
love wine, want to enjoy it, but also want to make sure they're just staying in touch with all other aspects of wellness because they talk about yoga and meditation and wine in
Hmm.
moderation, that sort of thing as well.
Right.
I admire what they're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, they're doing
Yeah,
good things.
absolutely. So, I mean, you've had so many great experiences. Is there another one that occurs to you that's kind of been the highlight of your career so far?
Highlight of my career is hard to choose, but my the best the best like wine related travel experience I've ever had, and it will always be my favorite, is the two times that I was able to hike the Camino de Santiago with my dad.
Oh, where
I'm
is
not gonna
that?
cry.
Yes, okay. Go
Um,
for it.
it's in Spain,
Yeah, okay.
and well, the Santiago de Compostela, which is like the end point,
Okay.
the main end point, I should say. There
Okay.
are trails that go all through Europe and beyond, and people just walk or bike hundreds and hundreds of miles to get
Wow.
to Santiago de Compostela.
Okay.
It's a historic pilgrimage. It's a biblical pilgrimage, and
Hmm.
my dad wasn't religious, but he somehow came upon this hike. I think actually it was. I think he had heard about it from that movie The Way,
Okay.
with Martin Sheen.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, maybe not Martin Sheen. The dad, Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
Or maybe it was Martin Sheen. I don't remember. But
But the one is father of the other one, Martin Sheen, or whatever, or they're
yeah.
brothers. Yeah. Anyway, one of those guys.
Yeah, and so he was like, I have to do this. And that's just who he was.
Hmm.
He also traveled for a living, and I kind of have followed in his footsteps. And
Hmm.
he again, like he and I shared a real love of wine. He's the French parent. My mom's American.
Okay.
Um, and so he did the Camino a couple times by himself, and he was just hooked.
Hmm.
And so finally he convinced me and my sister to come with him. And so my sister and I went with him once, for I think it was 2 weeks, and we hiked, I want to say we did almost 200 miles.
Really?
Hmm.
Wow.
And then the second time, he and I did, I think it was a bit longer actually. I think it was just over 200 miles, on foot through. Where did we start? I don't remember where we started. It was somewhere in Spain, and we walked through Galicia, and we had great wine every night.
Ah.
We tasted wine at a winery, and like every night we would have something fun to drink with our dinner. And so
Oh, beautiful.
we were able to sort of, it was, wine was just sort of like an ancillary part of this bigger thing that we were doing. But those
Mm.
are some of the most important memories that I will always, always treasure for the rest of my life.
Oh, that sounds marvelous, really.
Yeah.
I can just imagine it, the scenery, the walking, and then at night you're tired, but you have these great meals, great wine, and of course, your dad and your sister, very personal. That's
Yeah.
lovely, lovely. Um, Now you've getting back more to the wine as well. What are your favorite tips when it comes to like wine tasting, wine drinking? Like what kind of um, what are your favorite tips for, improving your tasting skills or your appreciation of wine?
So I've actually written some guides. I've done a wine tasting guide and like a, so they're two separate guides for liquor.com on how to taste like a pro,
Oh, okay.
no matter what your experience level is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had basically a panel of experts weigh in on how you can become a good wine taster. And so, even as a beginner.
Okay.
So, some of the things that they recommended for the wine story included like no perfume, don't wear any perfume because that
Right.
obviously can affect your senses. Don't, drink anything don't drink anything but water before, immediately before the tasting.
Okay.
I think a lot of people recommend tasting around like 11 a.m. because that's when your palate's at its peak.
It is. Seems
Yeah,
bizarre for a lot of people to start
right.
drinking, but there's a difference between, drinking and tasting, and it's thinking.
hmm
So,
Yeah, and then I think like the biggest thing is so whenever I'm around friends or family and they're like, they'll jokingly be like, "Hi, I'm swirling this wine," and I'm like, "Okay, um, don't you don't need to move your whole arm because you'll lose the wine at some point." Um, so it's all on the wrist.
right, that's true.
Yeah,
Like a tennis serve or something.
yeah, yeah. So I think that is what kind of clicks for some people.
Yeah,
It's like I don't have to, I don't. It's not like a full body motion. It's just like a little
that's right.
flick.
That's
Yeah.
true. I've got to tell my partner Miles, because he does this trying to be fancy, and it's like,
You're doing
okay,
too much work. Like you
that's
don't need to do
right.
all that work.
That's right. Just the wrist, like the
hmm
queen waving or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
And what do you think is the worst advice people get about wine?
Oh my God, I could go on about this probably for a long time, but I won't. I'll spare you. Um, I cannot stand it when I read these stuffy articles, which happen to be usually written by white men.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Okay. Yep.
there's a connection there. And when this advice feels so elitist and so like, you know, there are there are certainly, guidelines to drinking wine and optimizing the experience, but like there's nobody who, wrote into law like you cannot drink red wine with cheese. Like I will drink red wine with cheese if I please,
Okay.
especially as a French person, like I felt attacked. Um, so I just like the advice that is given in sort of an elitist way, and there are so many different pieces of advice that can be delivered that way. Um, Nobody should ever make you feel bad about drinking wine the way you want to. If you want to put, and I've changed my views on some things over the years, of course, but like if you want to put, if your Chardonnay is warm and it's a summer day and you want to like drink out of an insulated tumbler and put an ice cube in it, like
Hmm.
who cares?
Right. I agree. Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily do that with like a really expensive Chardonnay, but
Sure.
who cares at the end of the day? So don't listen to advice if it makes you feel bad.
That's good. That's good for life.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
just wine. Absolutely. And what are some of the most unusual wine and food pairings you've ever tried? You didn't think they worked, but it actually worked.
Um,
Or maybe some
I
that didn't.
think Yeah, so I think generally, like I keep a really open mind about pairings because sometimes I'll just be like, to your point, I'll just be like, oh wow, that tastes really awesome together in an unexpected way. Like
Hmm.
it could be just like a very specific cheese from a very specific producer, and I'll take a sip of whatever wine I have in my hand. I'm like, wow, that is just the way they play off of one another
Yeah.
is like, and that just happens kind of by chance sometimes, at least for me.
Sure.
I've done the WSET2 course in wines, and they talk about the general approach to pairing wines and food. Like, for example, I think a lot of people don't know that dessert wine is something that you can pair with dessert versus drinking for dessert or drinking after dinner.
Hmm.
Because sweetness in food will, it has a drying effect on wines. And so if you pair like a super dry cab with, a piece of chocolate cake, you're not gonna be loving life.
No,
Like
no, that's a
it's
very
gonna,
mean thing to do to your mouth.
yeah, it's gonna come off as like very acrid and very sort of like, whoa, what is going on here? So, like grab a bottle of like tawny port and try sipping that with your like different types of desserts and see what happens, see what you like.
So what happens with the sweet wine? Does the sweet wine make, or does the dessert make the wine taste less sweet? Like even when it's a tawny port? What, what were you finding there?
So, well, so because food, like sweetness in food has this drying effect on wines,
Okay.
it makes like I think the term they use is hard. It has like there's a hard effect on the drier the wine, like the more hard it's going to seem
Okay.
with a sweeter dish. And so if you again like that's why we wouldn't pair a super dry red with a really sweet sort of unctuous dessert.
Right.
So when you have, and I feel like this comparison is kind of relevant, but maybe not really. If you took, I'm a big fan of taking like a delicious cordial or, like a sweeter wine and just drizzling it over ice cream.
Mm.
Like if you think of super deep dark chocolate ice cream and a drizzle of Chambord, like
Oh,
hello.
yes.
Um, and so if you think about it like that, like,
Hmm.
okay, tawny port is rich, viscous, nutty, delicious usually.
Yep.
And you pair that with something like a creme brulee, you can kind of
Mm.
see where those notes match up and how this like sort of, with a dessert like creme brulee, which is almost like it has this distinct taste, but it's not an overpoweringly distinctive flavor. So it's not like it sort of serves as a good blank canvas to have something like tawny port where you can really pick up on those beautiful nuanced notes of all that age.
Mm.
And yeah, now I want creme brulee and tawny
Me
port.
too. I want the chocolate ice cream. I'm still stuck in the back on the chocolate ice cream in
Oh yeah.
Chambord.
I'm a big Chambord fan.
Oh, and is that like a cherry flavored liqueur? I'm not as deep into
So
spirits as I am to wine.
it's black raspberry.
Oh, it's black raspberry.
And it
Okay.
is just like, okay, I'm not gonna drink a glass of Chambord, for fun. But like,
Right.
um
It just
I
sounds
so
decadent.
yeah, so my mom loves Kir Royale, and
Ah,
I can appreciate a Kir Royale, but I personally prefer, instead of the crème de cassis, I personally prefer using Chambord.
hmm. Okay. Well, I know what I'm doing
Hmm.
tonight.
Yeah. Oh
It's
my God, tell
Friday.
me how you like it.
Yes,
I
I
remember
will. I will.
on New Year's Day of this year. So, we couldn't really go out. We couldn't really do
Right.
anything crazy. And so we just did brunch at home with two of our very close friends.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm bringing this like random little bottle of Chambord we have. And um, I was like, we could put it in I was very excited because we hadn't done anything like this in so long. I was like, we can put it in the mimosas. We can try it, just with sparkling wine. We can blah 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 blah. We can drizzle it on this, that, and the other thing. And so I made a mimosa with Chambord, and I was like, my mind is just blown. Like this is the best thing I've ever tasted, and I will have six of these, please.
Oh, wow. So you were putting the Chambord in orange juice?
Yeah, orange juice and sparkling wine.
Yes, and Chambord, like with the the black raspberry.
Just a
So
tiny bit.
just
Yeah.
a tiny bit. Okay, got it.
Mhm.
Oh, that's
It was
interesting.
this pretty sort of like dusky pink color, and it
Yeah,
was objectively just delicious. And it was a crowd pleaser. And like mimosas, they're not the most like sophisticated drink. Like I know a lot of
sure.
people turn their nose down at mimosas, but like they're just they're just good to
Yeah, yeah.
drink. They're just
Well,
fun. They taste good.
and we've
So,
got Mother's Day coming up if we want to go
yeah.
traditional and give mom a treat with the Chambord. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to play around with liqueurs.
Yeah. Fantastic. Um, so what do you think you would be doing if you weren't writing about wine spirits? Would you be a writer in another genre, or I guess maybe it would be the fashion track? I don't know.
Possibly. I mean, with my degree is in international fashion marketing and Italian language. So, I might be working for an Italian company or publication. I spent some time at GQ in GQ in the US.
Okay.
And so, magazine life at Condé Nast was really intense.
I'll
It was
bet.
difficult, but you know, um, and that was during like intern gate where there was a class action lawsuit when they were
Good Lord.
they were treating interns like, you know, it
Hmm.
was horrible. Um, eh, so I was an intern and then a freelancer. I don't know why I stayed on, but it was good experience.
Okay.
But I think that was that being quite the introduction to fashion media had me like a little traumatized, but there is like an allure to it for sure. So maybe I would have ended up at another publication in the fashion world. I also did. I was the production editor at Milk Studios for a short time,
Okay.
which is a big like fashion conglomerate in New York, and so it's a huge building. They have studios. It started out as studios, so brands used to come and like do all their shoots at Milk Studios, and then it sort of snowballed into this bigger company that had, they have Milk Makeup, they have a creative agency, and they have their publication, which is part of the creative agency. Milk.xyz is the publication. And so I got to sort of jump back into fashion with that. And it was fun. I mean, it was really intense. Like I was covering Fashion Week. Um, and it was just like, oh my God, like I need therapy. But I could see myself, yeah, maybe going
Going
back
back
to
there.
something like that.
Cool. You've packed so much life into your relatively short life, Celine. I admire all
Yeah,
the adventures and experiences you've had. Is there
thank you.
anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to mention now?
Oh man. Um, I mean, I think we've covered a lot in a short period of time, and your questions have been awesome. And that's
Oh,
that's just
thank you.
a testament to you as a host. You're a great host.
Thank you.
Um, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think just as a general approach to wine and spirits, like I said, it's like at the end of the day, it's supposed to be fun.
Mm,
And, if you feel like you're in a snobby kind of environment or someone's giving you sort of like elitist vibes and making you feel like it's not fun,
mhm.
then, you know, like just remember that you're supposed to be having fun and not to feel
Yeah,
bad about yourself.
it's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Wine and
I
life.
mean, if if there's one thing we didn't cover, it's the rampant misogyny in the wine and spirits world,
Mm,
but that's something that, there's a lot to unpack there. And so
there
it's
is. We have
not
to have
something we
another
could cover.
conversation about that because
Hmm.
I'm very interested in that as well. But yes, it's a huge issue, but at least it's coming to light more and more now with the New York Times expose
Hmm.
and other pieces. So
Yeah,
lots to think about.
for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's breeding grounds for what I'm referring to.
Yeah, yeah.
People sort of doubting you and your knowledge and your capabilities, and from like an elitist perspective, and it's not a good feeling,
No,
and I personally don't want to make anyone feel like that, so I try to incorporate that in my writing.
that's terrific, and you do.
Thank
Um,
you.
Absolutely. All right. So where can we find you online? Where are you most likely to be seen?
So I have a website with all, about me and some of my work, and that's just my name, Celine Bossart at or that's my email. It's CelineBossart.com.
Okay,
And
great.
then on Instagram, which is the social platform that I use the most,
Okay.
I'm Celine Boss, but the O is a zero.
Oh, okay.
B Celine, Celine B0SS.
Great. I'll look for you there. I can't wait to see your pictures too. I have to look
Yeah.
for I can't wait to see those platform shoes.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's on my Instagram. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to see them.
Yeah.
That's great, Celine. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Great
you for having
stories.
me.
Love them. And wish you all the best. And I can't wait we'll have to chat again because I'm sure you'll pack another 20 years into the next five at least with the way you're
Hopefully,
going.
if we can get out, we can get out of here, get out of Dodge, you know.
I know, I know, I know. It's coming. I think. I think. I'm
Yeah.
optimistic. Anyway,
Yes, me
all right.
too.
Well,
Thank you so
cheers. I'll raise
much.
my glass to you tonight. And
Yes.
yeah,
Let me
let's.
know how you like Chambord.
Oh, I will. I
I'm
can't
dying to
wait.
hear.
Can't wait. All right. Okay. Bye for now, Celine.
Bye. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Have a good day.
All right. You too.